more I thought about it, I thought, you know, we may have something. We really may have something. But it came to me quickly after moving here and establishing myself and becoming part of the community, which is easy to do because it's a neat little community, that this place is a zoo. And it must have been 3 or 4, maybe 5 months later when I figured out, I'm one of the animals. Since then, it's all just been fun. Maybe it's because it's an island. Don't know. Maybe it's because of its particular history. Just don't know. But this is a very special town. It always has been. Now, it does, no doubt, shelter a few characters. Like, for instance, would the first row all stand up, please? I see a lot of characters in here. Well, never mind. I'll leave that to Mark. The man who's going to speak to you tonight is an incredible fellow. His name is Mark Creighton. He's quite well educated, but he didn't want me to tell you where he went to school. Don't want to do that. But both very, very good schools. And he studied economics. And I won't tell you that Cornell was one of the schools. New York University was another. Because he doesn't want me to. He's really a remarkable guy. He is the man who got the idea and acted on it to begin to preserve the history of Port Aransas. Some, going on 30 years ago, began collecting photos. Right after he got there, he realized what a special place this was. So, little by little, he gathered photo here and photo there. They began to archive them by scanning them. And now, he has presented to the museum its crown jewel, the archive of these photos, which now number 9,000. Now, when he gets up here, he'll tell you, no, it's 9,812, because since last week, when I knew what it was, it's no doubt coming back. This guy is non-stop worker. He never stops, believe me. Or maybe he does, but I've never caught him at it. He has started many businesses, run others. He's a pilot. In fact, he's an extremely generous pilot. He's a very eager pilot. He will take you flying if you stand still long enough. He has taken more people flying over this island, I think, than anyone can imagine. And he loves our town. Now, the subject tonight is Port Aransas characters, and so here is our very own Port Aransas character, Mark Creighton.
had to do to go in there with a sailboat. It was a lot of work. So let's have the next slide. Along comes Eli Ropes. And Eli Ropes was a visionary, and he was a character. Among other things, he was the sales manager of the Singer Sewing Machine Company. And he quit that, and on a trip to Galveston, came further south and said, boy, oh boy, this place needs a developer because there's so much here, as we saw in the past, and I'm the guy that can do it. So let's have the next slide. He decided that he was going to go through, here we have, I've turned the chart around. Here's our path coming in off the Gulf. And instead of going around and this way, he was going to dredge a pass through Mustang Island and be able to go with deep water all the way over to Corpus Christi. What a wonderful idea. And in fact, he bought Mustang Island for $25,000 for the entire island. But he borrowed the money and somebody else was holding the note, and ultimately he didn't own the island. His plan, what a character. His plans included a hotel, the Alta Vista in Corpus Christi, 125 rooms. A railroad to the valley, which never got built, but it was the idea and didn't get started. They started to grade. A trolley system in there. And this was all in 1888. And in 1888, or the beginning of it, what is now Port Aransas was just a bunch of houses on the end of Mustang Island. The people were so excited that they changed the name of their bunch of houses to Ropesville because they could see that this was the beginning of big things. Well, in 1893, there was a panic, a financial panic. Singer, Mr. Singer and everybody else who was backing Ropes said no more, and that died. And he ran away, and there were stories about him being accosted on the street because he tried to get money from all the local people. And so he goes back to New Jersey, which is where he came from, where a lot of ne'er-do-wells come from. And off he goes. Let's have the next slide. The next character is Colonel Eddie Green, and he was a big character. He was 6'4", weighed about 300 pounds. His mother was Hetty Green, the richest woman on earth. And one of the stories about Hetty Green was that she was so parsimonious that he hurt his leg and it became infected. And she took him to I guess we call it a clinic today, a free clinic. And here she is, the richest woman in the world, but she takes him there. He worked on it because she didn't want to spend any money. Ultimately, he lost his leg. There are different stories about whether that in fact was the reason, but in any event, he had a peg leg. Let's have another. Jim Maloney isn't here, is he? We're so lucky in our museum to have people who are both connected and have these wonderful collections that they'll share with us and ultimately with the community. And there's only one in existence, this little red book. It's called the Tarpon Club. And Colonel Eddie Green moved to Texas in 1892 to run a railroad for his mother. And he met a lot of people, he enjoyed the sporting life, and he figured, well, gee whiz, I'm going to start a little club for all my friends. And this book, from 1899, has the bylaws and all the members, and there were only 2 members from Nueces County where we live that were rich enough to be able to even be asked to be in the club. But we have half of the names that are in there you would recognize. They're from all over the country. And so the next slide, 3. This is what he built, a little clubhouse on the southern end of San Jose Island, right directly across from our harbor today. And you could not set foot on the island. There are an awful lot of stories about of a neat thing. And we just don't think about something like this, built in 1896. It had electric lights, it had an elevator. It was about as good as you could possibly build, even on the East Coast, but he did it in an uninhabited island off Texas. That's the next picture. This is a close-up. You can see just built up on pilings, a little calf running around. Let's look at the next one. And that's the Mabel, which is the boat that came with it. Like so many of the people who were characters and had vision for our area, he lost interest. And Ropes lost interest because he had no money and people were chasing him. But this guy had money, but he just lost interest in the entire enterprise. By which I forgot to say, he had enough stroke that he was able to have his own post office there, and it was called Sport, Texas. And our museum has a scan of the only known postmark of Sport, Texas. There may be another one, but nobody knows about it. So it's kind of cool that we can bring that up and show it to you. The Mabel would go all the way to Rockport and pick up people and food and everything else to come to the dock there. Let's go to the next one. The next person is Gail Borden, which has no relationship whatsoever to Port Aransas, except that I thought it was a cool picture. Rather stern, and it really does have something to do with Port Aransas. Gail Borden came penniless to Texas and opened and started the very first newspaper in Texas, long before the Revolution in 1835. And among other things, he wrote with two other people, wrote the Constitution, first Constitution of the state of Texas. He also developed meat biscuits because he felt that there should be a high energy, high protein form of food that would travel and not spoil. And he was a great inventor, and so he invented the meat biscuits. Ultimately, we know him for condensed milk, Eagle brand, sweetened condensed milk, and so anyway, that's where the money came from for the next person, who is Gail Borden Munsell. And Gail Munsell shows up in Port Aransas in the late 20s, and he was a character. And here, this is the only picture that we have. I found that curious, but I couldn't find another one. Here he is with a camera on the jetties. But we do have a lot of movies of him over in video over in the museum, so you can have a lot of better idea what he looks like. But that's all I can find. What he did was bring us to the next level, and it was really kind of exciting to have somebody like this who saw the potential to what at that point was now Port Aransas. I should go back. Tarpon, Texas, morphed into Port Aransas because of the jetties, and we then had a port called Port Aransas, which is now Harbor Island. And the people here in town said, that's a change that we think is good, it's going to provide jobs, let's call it Port Aransas. And that stuff. Go through the next slide. One of the things that he did was he owned the Harbor Island Terminal Railroad. He built commercial buildings. The foundation for this building is on Avenue C, is on 10th Street, just south of Avenue C. And he built these stores on the west side and the east side. These are on the west side. They were knocked down in the hurricane in 1944. But that was our first mall, our first shopping center. Gail Borden Munsell gave us. He also had developed an ice plant, a telephone exchange, and he generated electricity. They had large tanks that they brought over on the ferry, which started in 28. They brought tankers over to fill the diesel fuel up. And there are some people who can remember, we were talking, Marcy, are you here? We had an interview with Marcy the other day, and Marcy's Matthews Ward Thomas. And Marcy said that, and her brother, Manny, that when visitors came to the island, they always complained about where the current telephone exchange is. And that was the electric plant and the telephone exchange and all these utilities that he just decided, well, we needed that. And so he was a character that really did quite a bit for us. We do have another two pictures. This was really going into the Depression, and he kept a lot of the local people busy. The Farley Boat Works, you see the concrete Farley boats around, and I guess you think of, hey, it's a nice planter. But the Farley family built boats here from the beginning of the 1900s up till 1972 or so. And this is a picture of a Farley boat being built. And then there's another one, which is not one of Gilmore and Russell's boats, but it's a Farley going out of the water. It's Bill Moore's boat. Gilmore and Russell married a local girl, Billy Peoples. She stayed behind when he went back to the East Coast after they were married in order to have her trousseau sewn by a local lady who was a wonderful seamstress. He is in a boat somewhere, has a heart attack and dies at 34 years old. And so that stopped all the development there with Gilmore Russell and we're in the middle of the Depression. So the next thing is, there we go, Ralph Plumley. There's a big jump here because this extends, Guthrie 64, does that sound right? 1964, Ralph retires, he's a businessman from Dallas, and things have languished in Port Aransas, so we did have gambling and other things to set us apart and create a few more characters. Ralph came with a big vision, and he was a character. And among other things, he developed 23 businesses in town, all from 1964 to about 1970. He then got sick, returned to Dallas, and we'll be able to see what happened about 1970. This is the past coming in. University of Texas is just starting to be built here, the new addition. There's the pier lot. And here is what used to be known as Enfield Marina. And over here, believe it or not, is, we have the next slide, a porpoise show. The Lake Water Porpoise Service. Can you imagine? We were way ahead of SeaWorld. And the people here, I just have such admiration for someone like Ralph Plumley who saw this vision, but actually did something about it. Let's look at the next slide. You can orient yourself. Here's coming off the ferry. Here's Connor, Cutoff Road. This is that new vacant building that's there. the second generation, and his kids are running the business. And there are many, many, many stores that they have that I think the community can be proud of. If you need a t-shirt, that's probably where you go. Let's go. Another family, another person that I think is was a character but had vision is Ivy McGee. And let's go to the next slide. See any common thread here? They came in 1967, and Mr. McGee had been a builder in Corpus Christi. He helped develop Allegro over in Rockport. And he came here first because his son Pat liked to surf. And Pat was a young kid, and Mrs. McGee and Ivy would come over and they let him go surfing. They built what we know now as a family center, the IGA. 1967. 1970, this is what happened to it. And to keep on going, because you have a vision and a trust the Port Raises is going to turn out okay, to me is astonishing. So we'll take here's another slide. That's old pictures, the early 80s of the family center. And then they also started the icebox stores, which now are Stripes. Let's have another slide. After Castor and Piper, they took over what's now what we think of as Island Moorings. It was Latitude 27, and it became Island Moorings. Another group of visionaries, but they were like the old visionaries. They got started, Castor and Piper, and built what we now know as Island Moorings. It was called Mustang Beach. But it was about 20 years too soon, and it never really took off until now. It's almost full. But there have been people like the Piper family, Piper Cumberland, Piper Aircraft, who could see this wonderful location that we have and had big dreams, but they never were able to get it into reality. Now let's see what we have next. Okay, now we're getting into the people characters that are more like us in the room. Matteo Bouillon was from the Baltic countries, off the Adriatic, over on the east side of the Adriatic. We now think of Bosnia and Serbia in that area. It used to be part of when he came here, it was part of the what do they call Austro-Hungarian Empire. And he always said he was from Austria. And it actually was, but we know it now as Bosnia or had been Yugoslavia. And we know of Charlie's pasture, and his son Charlie Bouillon, carried that on. He was a character, and Charlie was a character. Let's go to the next slide. Tomas Andreas Jokasevich came also from what was split Yugoslavia, and right away on a ship, had an English captain. He needed to see his papers, and the captain couldn't either spell or didn't want to write down Tomas Andreas Jokasevich, so he made him Thomas Andrew Matthews. And the Matthews family that we have here today, the name T.H., no T.T., is from him. He was an extremely enterprising person. He spoke at least 5 languages and maybe more, so he had very little education. And one of the realities was when they were building the jetties back in 1908 onward, those kind of people were not allowed in the Tarpon Inn, which was the only place that you would go to get a drink. And those people were immigrants from generally what we think of now as Eastern Europe. And so what Tom did was build a bar on a barge. And there was a prohibition against more than one bar for the population that we had. So therefore, A, they couldn't go in there and drink because they were undesirable, and B, you couldn't build another bar on land. So Tom says, okay, that's no problem. So he built this bar on it, and he you grow up here. On the left is Godfrey Roberts. He's here. And here he is a little later in life. And I'm sure he was an awful lot more fun as he grew older. I think we have a few more. Captain Redbeard means something to a lot of people, but he was a character and part of Port Aransas and cherished by everyone. Let's go to the PAPHA. His name was James Tabor, and he was a ferry boat captain, and he could do that. There were postcards made up and everything else, but he just fit in here. He wasn't anything out of the ordinary. He was a misfits fit. Howard Oldham was not so much a character, but he influenced so much about what is in Port Aransas right now with the University of Texas Marine Science Institute. It used to be the engineers, it's a dormitory now, the engineers building, and a few other outbuildings, and that was it, the Pier Lab. And then during his tenure as director at UTMSI, most of the big buildings that are out there now were built. And he set the stage for what has gone, and we're just world famous for the stuff that we do. There's another one coming up. The next guy is Bob Jones, in my opinion, who's a character, but a great leader and a great visionary. And he brought these people to Port Aransas. They're now the professors. They weren't full professors then. There's Ken Dutton, Lee, Ed Buskey, and anyway, their hair's a different color at this point. But we are famous worldwide for the work that they do there. And I just like that picture of the characters that come here. Everyone knows Tony. And if, he should, when you Google character, that should come up. This picture on the internet. He really is, but he's such a nice guy. He cares so much about this town and the beach and all the critters and everything that, and he's embraced by everyone. And it wouldn't be that way in another community. We're lucky. Rick Tinnen is another person who has done so much for marine education at the university. You don't have to spend much time. Solney Johns used to cruise the beach in that Jeep. And many people in the 50s remember him. But this wouldn't go over in Topeka, Kansas, believe me. But in Port Aransas, everybody knows it. Let's have another one. I was hoping that Marcy and Nay would be here because they don't look like that anymore. But they're such neat folks, and they share so much with the community and help us out in the museum with this knowledge that goes back into the 30s. It's really amazing. Let's have another one. John Thompson, a character. You sit with John, and he has this dry humor. He loves Port Aransas, he loves UTMSI, but Boy Scouts are the real big thing in his life. And we're just so blessed to have someone like John. Let's go on. Florida and Ella Mae Roberts. If you haven't read The Stubborn Fisherman, I guess it's in the library, you can get it occasionally on eBay, but it's a wonderful story about the curious things that went on here after 1929 when they moved to the island. Ed Cotter. Anybody else would just be someone fishing in their boat. He got one of these newfangled internal combustion engines, and instead of rowing the boats, which every individual guides did, out to the end of the jetty to get sharpened, he would link them together and haul everyone out to the end of the jetty, let them anchor, and then he would go in his boat from boat to boat, baiting their hooks and telling them how to fish. And if they didn't catch anything, they'd go from the north jetty to the south jetty or vice versa. But anyway, that's kind of a cool thing in Port Aransas. It's a bonus line. There are so many neat people that make this town what it is. And it isn't just the geography and the setting, it's the people. And I think when you really think about your experience in Port Aransas, it's probably not the setting, it's probably the people that you meet and interact with. Whether you're a winter Texan or you're a local and you're here all the time, this is really a neat place. Let's go on to, I'm going to end with Uncle Dolly. And what I want to do is read something that was written on his passing. And I'd just like to say that Ray Fiedler, who wrote this, was not a Rudyard Kipling or Robert Service. But listen to how he got the essence of somebody who was a character here. But really I shouldn't say all, what Uncle Dolly did was he was a cook. He worked in restaurants, he sold barbecue. Some people remember the U-Fill up on the corner here. It's just an empty lot right now. But he wasn't somebody that anyone would notice in Dallas, but he was a big part of the lives of people here and respected. On the tabletop, the chicken bones piled carelessly before the throne. He leans back easy, like Roosevelt, smiles like the sun and loosens his belt. His children surround him, and the man is content to flip evening's coin and watch how it's spent. One eye gleaming, the other orb dreaming, his hat just a halo askew in his head. He lights a Pell Mell, gives his blessing to all, and takes a pull of Johnny Walker Red. We may search the world over for four-leaf clover, but find us a man who is true, one who cares if you're troubled, one who cares if it's trouble you share, and who'll drink to your victory too. Give him the name of a person you blame, and he'll smile while stirring the stew. By it's time for the rice, he knows you'll think twice about who's doing what and to whom. It's awesome to think that there are so few who live so long and stayed so new. What a privilege, for he helped us see through the murk of this world's complexity. So this be Dolly's legacy for the island he loved, for his children run free, a diamond of pure simplicity. Let's go to the last slide. Here we've run full circle, and if we've learned anything, I think, is that this is not just a beautiful setting where we live, but it's made, there's a little different dimension in the character of the town and the characters that are in the town. And when we put the lights up, I think probably if you look to your left or right, you're probably going to find somebody that fits that designation. And if you don't know, you want to spend a little more time with it. Thanks for your attention.
Wow. Okay, look to your right. Look to your left. See anybody you saw there? What a grand and wonderful tale. What a grand and wonderful tale. Right here in this room tonight, there are some people who could easily be elevated to the rank of Port Aransas character. No doubt about it. And there's just something in this town. The last open air in San Salvador, Texas. A wonderful little spot, a zoo in which you are the animals. The next lecture is 2 weeks from tonight. It will be just as good. There will be wine. Keep in mind, we give you the wine, but we would love to get a donation back. No questions for Mark? Anybody have a question for Mark? Back there in the back. Come on, Mark. Where'd you go?
He's sitting right next to me. I could turn around and ask him in person, but do you remember 15 that lived on the island, and he had, the joint had moved off and left him. But everybody on the island took care of him and fed him. You remember that?
When I moved to the island, all the dogs used to wear bandanas. And there are just so many character stories, but Richard has told me one yesterday. I have actually a picture of it, where at the party house, they decided to have a party for all the dogs in Puerto Rico. And the whole idea was to get a picture of this, so they were trying to pile the dogs, that's some pictures, in the back of a pickup truck. Well, of course, you put one in, the other one comes out. But that's the kind of silliness that goes on and went on here that just makes this different from Topeka.
Back and back.
There was the lighthouse keeper before Rick was Steve Duran, and he had a rather amazing dog that wanted to come to town to get some handouts, and the dogs had all hitchhiked. Everybody knew where the dog wanted to go. You stop, pick it up, and take it. That dog would come to swim across the Shrimper Channel, then he would come to the ship channel, and that was before all that bulkheading was over there. There was no bulkheads on either side, and he'd watch for a while, and he'd figure out which way the current was going and how strong, and he'd go down the channel so he could swim across and come out where he wanted to. Then he'd show up completely whooped on somebody's porch, get something to eat and drink, and go off looking for his girlfriend.
We had a guy on the island that had a female dog, and he wanted to breed with a coyote, so he tied it out in the dunes, swear. And the mating did occur, and there was a litter. And they were pretty wild-looking dogs. One of them roamed freely. Don't know what became the others, but this one was named Star. It had a star right in the middle of its head. And they roamed the island. Everybody loved it. Everybody owned it. Nobody could keep it. They would not stay where it belonged. The dog catcher finally picked it up. The dog catcher was not a popular guy. Everybody knew him. Nobody liked him. By the time he got almost back to where he was going to dump the dog, a phalanx of cars pulled across the road and stopped him. They got Star out, turned him loose, and let him run. While they held the dog catcher at bay. Any questions? Any other questions? Any other stories? Yes. Dr. Burns.
I was just going to add a character by the name of Dusty Lowe's. He was a sculptor. He worked at Creighton Shed. And he had displays at the corner of East Street and Allen. And the file I handled at the museum. He made many famous things.
He made some concrete animals that were incredible. You could get your picture taken on them. One of them still remains, at least in front of Charlie Brown's house on East Avenue B. Now, if you can find East Avenue B, then you have become a Puerto Rican. It's hard to find because our streets don't make a lot of sense. It's almost the last spot on the island. It's right next to your chapel, and you'll see a concrete line. Charlie the Lion lives there, and that was one of Dusty Rose animals. It's pretty good. Is that a hand back there?
Yes. Can you tell us what you're doing with the Farley Boat Works?
Yes, we're resting at the moment, having spent so much time acquiring it. The Farley Boat Works has recently been bought by the museum, by PAPHA, Puerto Rico's Preservation Historical Association. Isn't that a cute man, PAPHA? Don't you love that? Sure you do. That's what I thought so. The Farley Boat Works was so important to the history of Puerto Rico. You've no doubt seen the little concrete boats all over town. That's what they refer to. The Farleys came here and opened a shop about 1916, some say 17, some say 12, but a long time ago, and solidified, cemented our sport fishing industry with power boats. You saw Ed Cotter tugging all those skiffs out to sea. That's the way we fished, and so the Farleys came here, established power boats. Now, they've been here for quite a long time, and it looks like it's early 1870s we have a party here, but they came in there with a boat shop. That boat shop finally wore out, and they needed to build a few bigger boats, and so they built the second shop up on Avenue C, In 1970, they went out of business. They were both old fellas, and they decided they'd had enough. And besides that, wooden boats were now a thing of the past. They've been taken over by fiberglass boats. Their shop then was sold to a guy who then leased it out to a series of different owners. Everything you can imagine was done in that old shop, and it survived. Somewhere about 1985, I rented the back half of it because I wanted to see it saved. This was something I figured someday the town would want, was to remember this incredible era. This is when we took the president fishing. By the way, there's only ever been one president, because he's the only one who ever came to Fort Francis. Why should we give the others credit? This is the people who built the boat that took the president fishing. These are the people who built the boats that established the fishing trade here in Fort Francis. So this old shop went through an awful lot of iterations and ended up as a Harley Davidson motorcycle shop. On East Avenue, from Avenue C, you can see it if you drive by. But it is the Farmer Boat Shop. A month ago, or a little less, our museum closed on that property. Here it is our intent that we were going to restore it and reopen it as both an adjunct to our museum, where we can display the last good early Farley boat patina, as well as many other boats that were built here in Port Aransas, and as a working boat shop, where we hope once again to teach children and adults to build boats. That's what we intend to do with the shop. Watch this spot. We intend that in a year we will begin the restoration. But those are our plans for the Farley Boat Shop. Thanks for the question. See if I have a hand or not. Yes? That person right there. Yes.
Are you going to?
I'm going to answer you.
Well, this sort of goes back to the dog. I remember, and there are people in this room who want perhaps credit. There was a very hotly contested issue about whether or not overnight camping should be permitted on the beach. And so many people were excited about this that the city council meeting was held right here where we are. And everybody, all the rednecks and all the hippies and all the hippies' dogs. No air conditioning then, and so all the windows were open and people were sitting up in the windows. So one person would get up and speak, and half the people would boo and hiss, and half the people would cheer and clap, and all the dogs would bark. Dogs should be allowed to attend. And all three TV stations from Carthage were here and they discussed it for perhaps 20 minutes at least, and finally voted, and the dogs won 3-2.
I may have been, but I don't remember that.
Young Martin sat right over there in that window with his dog. You had to have a dog, and you had to have a bandana for the dog in those days.
Well, I'm sure that that's a true story.
I was here. And I heard from friends far away, because everybody picked up this story and it appeared across the land, and it was sort of unusual to have.
Would you, is there a hand right there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'd like to tell two short, quick stories. One is about Dorothy Roberts, who was from the famous Roberts family. And she had a restaurant, which I think was in the building that the Gap is now. And it was called The Cook and Waiter, because she was the cook and the waiter. And she had the best enchiladas in town if she'd let you in. She kept the screen door hooked, and if she liked your look, she'd let you in. If not, she wouldn't. And another story, I'm standing next to the police chief, so this is a little dangerous. We had a bar down and a hotel down on the beach called Cody's, which is now the Cody's on the highway, which was forced to be moved off the beach. And the cops back then were all the time busting Cody's because of the young people in there. And they went down there one time, and I think they had helmets on and everything, went in to roust everybody. Uh-oh, left the car keys in the cop car. When they came out, the cop car was bobbing at about 6 feet of water, probably with the light going. And the greatest fun in the days after that was ask any cop you saw if he'd been to Cody's car wash.
Now, speaking of Porter Manson's characters, that is Dr. Richard Watson standing up. Now, let's see, is Jolene still here? Would you stand up, Jolene? Come on. Stand up, Jolene. Stand up, Jolene. This is Jolene Gabbett, who was here while Ralph Plumley was here and did a lot of business with him. She and her husband built the building that is now the Art Center for the Island. And I don't dare tell half of the stories that I know about her. She is a bona fide Porter Manson's character. Can we have a hand for her? Yeah, I stand corrected. Her last accomplishment, done in her normal, gentle way, has resulted in the exhibit that's in the Civic Center. Is that for me? Oh, you got to turn your phone off. The exhibit that's in the Civic Center was driven through, start to finish, by Jolene Gabbett. Believe me, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. And one last comment here. The city council meeting she described differs very little from the ones we still have.
Legend has it that treasure buried here. He had pillaging the boats, and then a hurricane came in and marked the spot with